changing your life one story at a time. This is the Chicken Soup for the Soul podcast with Editor-in-Chief Amy Newmark.
Hey, it's Amy Newmark with your daily dose of Chicken Soup for the Soul inspiration. It's Motivational Monday, and today I want to talk about one of the important themes in my upcoming book, which is called Simply Happy. This is one of the keys to having a happy life, and what I'm talking about is learning to stop criticizing yourself and instead learning to love and appreciate yourself. The story I'm going to tell you today is from a really powerful book that we published a couple of years ago called Chicken Soup for the Soul, Find Your Inner Strength. The story is called Old News, and it was written by Diane Stark. So one of the things that I talk about a lot in my Simply Happy book is that we all have way more inner strength than we give ourselves credit for. Our writers always tell us that they had no idea that they could live through whatever challenges they're writing about because you just don't know that you can do it until you're put in the position where you have to rise to the challenge. Now, Diane's challenge was getting a divorce. And I know that millions of people are going through a divorce at any given time. I looked it up, and there are between 800,000 and 900,000 divorces granted each year in the U.S. alone. And since it takes two to divorce, that means almost 2 million people per year just in the U.S. are finalizing a divorce, which may have been going on for years. So there are millions of people going through this process. But when you're one of them, you can feel very alone, and you can also feel like a failure. And that's what happened to Diane when she went through her divorce. She was at her first get-together with her whole family after announcing to them that she was getting the divorce, and it felt very awkward to her. And I actually remember that feeling from more than 20 years ago. You're there, but you're not all there. And you're just trying to pretend that everything is okay, even though your life is actually a disaster. So Diane's brothers, who would normally have been teasing her, were overly nice to her. And Diane felt like everyone was treating her like she was made of glass. But she had to admit it was probably true. She felt like she could shatter at any moment. Her sister-in-law tried to comfort her by telling her that her divorce would be old news pretty soon, and something else would come along in the family. But Diane thought that could never be true. Her heartbreak would never end. She had tried reading a book about improving your self-esteem, but to her it seemed to be filled with cliches, things like focus on the positive and tomorrow is a new day. And one piece of advice actually made her laugh out loud. The book said that she should start writing down every compliment that she received. She thought that was pretty funny because she said, were people going to compliment her on the bags under her eyes or the fact that she hadn't been eating so she looked gaunt and hollowed out? But then she decided to try it anyway. She would write down all the compliments that she received. 2 days later, a lady in the grocery store smiled at her. Now, do you remember one of my first podcasts, the one where I said that a smile is like a boomerang? Well, it really does work because Diane, who had not been smiling, got this smile boomerang thrown at her and smiled right back at the lady. And then the lady exclaimed, "Oh dear, you should do that more often. Your smile lights up your face." And over the next couple of weeks, Diane received compliments about being a good mom, about how her hair looked, about her intelligence, about her writing, and even about a casserole she made for a potluck dinner at her church. She dutifully wrote all the compliments on her list, and then one day she read the list back to herself, and she discovered that she was a clever, capable, creative person with a nice smile, pretty hair, and an excellent chicken casserole. And she found that she was starting to believe in herself again. She stopped beating herself up for her so-called failure as a wife. She realized that a failed marriage didn't make her a failure as a person. Diane learned to love herself, probably more than she even had before the divorce, because now she was evaluating herself just as herself and not as part of a duo. Here's what another divorcee, Lucille Ball, had to say on the topic. Love yourself first, and everything else falls into line. You really have to love yourself to get anything done in this world. I'm Amy Newmark. Thanks for listening to the Chicken Soup for the Soul podcast today. If you'd like to read some tips from the book I mentioned, Chicken Soup for the Soul, Find Your Inner Strength, then please go to our website, chickensoup.com. And come back tomorrow, Tip Tuesday, and I'll tell you about a woman who lost a friend unexpectedly and was then shocked into creating a new roadmap for her life. So she would always know when to say yes and when to say no.